Okay.
All right, so we have, as part of the Combat Readiness Yoga Academy, we've got Jan here. We're going to talk a little bit about voice and how your voice is used for teaching how to create energy and self-care. So, and I'll kind of give you, Jan and I have known each other well over 20 years because my son is 20 and I moved to graduate school. So it has probably been like 23, 24 years we've known each other on many capacities. So I'm very, very excited for Jan to bring this information to the Academy. And I'm just going to hand it over to you and kind of give us a little story, a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, when I'm speaking about the voice, I'm speaking about it in a literal sense. It is the instrument, of course, from which we speak. So I thought it would be interesting maybe to share a little story about when I learned to respect my voice and how I learned, how I came to that point in my life to respect my voice. And as you know, I've been a singer for many, many years, professional singer, since the late 70s. So that's telling you how long, a long time, like 50 years maybe. Anyway, back in the 80s, I was working a full-time job 5 days a week. I was singing 6 nights a week.
Holy cow.
And the day job I had at the time, I was a director of development, so I was always out speaking to potential funding sources and blah, blah, blah. And then at night, I was working from 9 to 1 a.m. singing in a variety band. So, you know, young and think you can do it all. And what I was beginning to realize, I was getting home at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I was getting up and I was not getting any rest at all. Okay, so that's one flag. And because my body had no rest, my voice had no rest because I was constantly talking. So I started noticing that my voice was getting hoarse, and I was sounding like Janis Joplin when I was singing, and even though some people thought that was good, I knew something wasn't feeling right.
Right.
So I went to an ENT after I was doing lozenges and drinking an inordinate amount of water and thinking I could remedy this on my own. Well, I couldn't. So I went to an ENT. I had an MRI done of my throat, and I was diagnosed with nodules.
Oh no.
So we're talking vocal nodules on the vocal cords, and they're like little blisters on your vocal cords. And so I was taxing my voice so much by singing, by talking all day, that I had to do something. And my doctor said, okay, I'm going to send you to a speech therapist. He said, but I will tell you this, that either you go on a complete vocal rest for 2 months, or you'll be facing surgery.
Oh, wow.
So I had to be quiet for 2 months. Now, can you imagine that? Somebody who used my voice for a living, you know, talking all day, singing all night. And I had to pare everything down and come to a screeching halt. So I wrote copious notes. I had to drink water, lots of tea, no caffeine. I had to do vocal exercises every day. And I had to have my calls screened. And I had to write notes. I had to communicate in other ways. So long story short, the speech therapist had to teach me how to breathe all over again correctly. From the abdomen, because I was breathing right here, from the chest to the throat. And so I was taxing my voice, I was taxing the larynx, and causing all kinds of complications. So the speech therapist taught me how to breathe. She taught me how to speak correctly. All of that was like from the beginning. So for those 2 months, I studied. I learned more about my voice. And at the end of the 2 months, I got a performance. My speech therapist came out to hear me, and she gave me 2 thumbs up because she was watching my belly.
Right.
She was listening to my voice. There was no strain. The air was flowing. And she said, "I'm releasing you." So it was like being released from custody.
Right.
You know, it was like I was in prison for 2 months, not being able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I had a newfound respect for my voice.
Right.
And so we're talking about our voice. We're also talking about how the spine plays a major part in our breath, especially the cervical spine.
Mm-hmm.
Because our trachea, the larynx is at the top of the trachea. And basically what the larynx is, it's an opening at the top of the trachea where there is an airway. And so when there's not enough air that passes through the larynx, your vocal cords rub together and they blister. And that's how you get vocal nodules. So if you're not breathing correctly, all of that is going to be very complicated. So I would say that a well-aligned spine facilitates the free laryngeal movement.
Mm-hmm.
From that, you get your full resonance. It's expansive, coordinated breathing. And, you know, conversely, the common postural distortions that, you know, we develop on a daily living basis can really significantly damage our vocal function.
Mm-hmm.
Slouching,
Right.
you know, our spines are all curved up. We're sitting a lot. We're not standing up and breathing, getting a full deep breath. We're just having half breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of using the diaphragm, which of course is the breathing muscle, and it's Greek, the word diaphragm I think is Greek for a partition wall. So you've got your partition wall between your thoracic and your abdominal contents.
Okay.
So using the diaphragm, bringing the air into the belly, up to the diaphragm, into the thoracic cavity, on up through the tracheal larynx and so forth. Breathing it's essential. Correct breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that in an abstract way, your breath is kind of naturally linked to the length and the quality of your thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you breathe in, you speak out. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So you're breathing in,
right,
and you're speaking out as you're releasing the air.
Mm-hmm.
And you're guiding your students, and you're guiding them with good words, but you also have to have a voice that results from any kind of deep actions that you take for your body and for your mind, for your heart.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are connected. And vocal energy kind of comes from the breath.
Right.
And you can energize your classes. And I liken it to being a sign language interpreter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're using your eyes, you're using full movement, you know, of your arms, you're using big, large movements, you know, as you're creating, as you're demonstrating your poses. Mm-hmm. And you want to be larger than life, for me anyway.
Right.
So breathing is the key. That's the key function, the key factor of developing a good voice. And there was another question that you mentioned, if I had any pet peeves. And really, my pet peeve, when I listen to singers and they're breathy,
Right.
They're singing from here, and it's a very breathy, and they're just singing right from here.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, there's no gut involved. There's no belly involved. It's a very little voice. And not only are they breathy, but they can't be heard.
Oh, right. And which can
So,
be like metaphorically as well, not only physically, but
yeah.
yeah.
So, so all those things, it's just so important for your vocal cords to have that airflow, constant airflow, so that you have a nice, full, resonant voice, so that you are projecting well to your students,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can hear you. You are also exuding confidence when you're speaking well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's, when your students are feeling that you're confident, then they feel confident that you're guiding them.
Right.
Trust you as you're guiding them. So I don't know if is all this making sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that that your voice has multiple meanings to it. You have the physical aspect, which I find interesting that your speech pathologist focused on your breathing.
Yes.
Because we automatically think, oh, if I have a sore throat, well, then I need to lubricate it. So
Right.
I need to drink more water, or a piece of candy or something like
Mhm.
that. And I think it's interesting that it came down to the fact that you were breathing and it was physical, and that the vocal cords were rubbing against each other, causing
Right.
the nodules, and that in
Yeah.
that, giving the voice a rest and then learning how to breathe then allowed you to sustain your
Right.
and not have to stop singing because
Yes.
of in essence abuse to your vocal cords.
Well,
uh,
you have all this tension locked up here. It's stress, it's tension, because you're not resting. You're not resting your body. You're not resting your voice. So there's very little airflow because you're just you've got your shoulders up in your ears and everything is nice and tight, and all of that connects.
right.
With breathing well, everything relaxes.
Right. And I think, like, as new yoga teachers, that stress of, I'm in a class, this is my first class, and we automatically, most people
Yeah.
carry stress right here in their shoulders, and it'll land here, depending on how many classes you teach in. Typically, new teachers don't limit, like, oh, yep,
Right.
as many classes as needed, so now I'm going to be teaching, 10 classes when really you should only be teaching 1 or 2 and not actually doing some self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So what instructions would you give as far as how to breathe?
How to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we know, when you breathe, everything changes. So
Right.
when you breathe, you find the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find the mind can direct the breath to the various parts of the body that are craving some kind of release of tension.
Mm-hmm.
So breathing correctly, you're thinking of your alignment as well. When you stand in mountain pose, when you have your virtual spine, when you have your neutral pelvis, and you've got your shoulders stacked over your hips and your hips stacked over the knees over the ankles, etc. So you're also checking in with your alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that, and then with your breathing and your alignment, and just having confidence and being relaxed. When you breathe, you relax.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the breath is our best friend.
Right.
Because when we're stressed, we know we can take a deep breath
Mm-hmm.
and make a world of difference,
Right.
which a lot of people don't know and don't do. Or
Well,
don't remember to do.
it just seems so simple, I think, is what it is.
It's very basic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basic and simple, that and it's a cue that a lot of yoga teachers will say, on your inhale, move your breath, or bring your focus to an area where you feel tension. And it's interesting that you have a real life applicable experience that you're like, yeah, I just had to relearn how to breathe to save my voice.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I can automatically tell when somebody is tense when they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Their voice is either really way up, the pitch is up here, and their shoulders are rising.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that they're not breathing, or that they're not breathing and they have a very low, droning voice, where you feel like it's an effort to breathe.
Okay, yeah.
So it's one extreme to the other.
Right.
And perky, I guess another pet peeve is a perky pitch. All right, now we're going to do this, and we're going to do this.
Right.
That's great. That's energetic. That can be positive.
Right.
But a steady class of that can get old.
Right.
I've had friends complain to me about yoga teachers that just turn them off with their voices.
Right. What was it about the voice that they didn't like?
They don't, well, one friend of mine said that the yoga teacher was just, she was talking incessantly, for one thing. Mm-hmm. So allowing no air in between, because she's talking so much. And really you need to create space. Mm-hmm. When you're talking, when you're giving guidance, you need to let that pose register with your students. Mm-hmm. You need to let them take a couple breaths and be with that pose and see what that feels like, and explore how that's feeling to them without barraging them with talk. Mm-hmm. Giving them a chance to let the pose register with them, to give them that space is important.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. What would you give as far as 5 tips for a healthy voice for up and coming teachers?
I would say rest, not just body rest, but resting your voice. If you have a succession of classes, find a time in between when you can rest your voice, where you can just breathe, take some deep breaths, rest your voice, drink inordinate amounts of water. I highly recommend. And always check in with your alignment.
Okay.
That's a key factor. Check on your breathing. It's very basic. If you're tense, you're not breathing well. You're not getting a full breath. Mm-hmm. You're tense, you only get like a half breath. And you feel like you can't get a full breath because you're so tense. And then, when you check on your breath and you bring it out from the belly and on up, it keeps the air flowing, keeps the vocal cords healthy. Right. Things that I would discourage people from doing with the voice is clearing your throat.
Really?
Is very, very bad. It's also...
Is that rubbing
those vocal cords against each other. No air is coming up through the airway, and it can be very damaging. Okay. So clearing the throat. Coughing is very detrimental. Excessive coughing. Mm-hmm. Try sipping water. Things like that just right. Kind of basic things, but nurturing your vocal cords. But I think basically just keeping in touch with yourself, mm-hmm. keeping with your mind, and keeping in touch with your students. If you're in touch with yourself and everything, your alignment, your breathing, then you can be more in touch with your students. Right. And your students can tell when you're nervous. They can right. tell when you're uncomfortable. Right. And you want to teach with a firm approach, but also with a warm heart. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that your intention, and that's something that we talk about all the time when you come in to teach, needs to be set prior to you walking into a room to teach. And I think that that then helps you stay centered and focused. And you're less likely when you are nervous to hear that little shake in your voice.
Sure.
You know, and if it does happen, then you know, okay, settle down, you know, breathe through it, and then it levels out your voice, and you're less likely to cause any damage. I know that, like at Fort Campbell, where we had to teach in a gym. So before we got our little karaoke system, we were having to, in essence, project.
Yes.
And at many, my background is speech path, so I already knew that I needed to start. I mean, it's digging deep. It's, you know, because I'm small and I'm in a gym, and you're competing with a basketball game going on behind you. So I already knew, okay, I know how to project, so I'm not going to lose my voice because I still need my voice for one of my other jobs. But I had many guest teachers that would come in and teach. And within the first 20 minutes, you know, their voice is going, their throat's dry. And, you know, so then I would have to step in and take over. But it's one of those where it doesn't matter if you're in that setting or even in a studio setting, knowing how to control where you're breathing from, how you're standing, your posture, and how all that comes into play. Way more relevant than I thought.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
And you know, we're all human. We all get nervous. We all stress out. You know, it's a fact of life.
Right.
But knowing how to control that by just taking a deep breath and just trying to relax, trying to be confident. You've got this. You know what you're doing. You have the knowledge. You have everything you need.
Right.
And then just sharing what you know.
Right. How would you say you could bring energy, like show energy, especially if, say, you're teaching like a peak pose, and so you're wanting to build this energy in the class because you want to get to this one peak pose before you start to then come down on the other side. How do you build that energy with your voice? Because and I'll give you an example. My dad wasn't really a yeller, but you could tell when he was mad by his voice and the tone of his voice. He didn't really have to yell at you, but it was just if it was quiet, then I was, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I am in deep shit now.
Right.
It was his voice. It wasn't like I have to yell to get your attention. He had that command of his voice that he was able to get our attention. And I think that as yoga teachers, I think we need to have that same command with our voice, so you can increase the energy or bring people in calming without whispering or without sounding creepy, or, you know, with the energy, not so cheerleader-ish, or, you know, because I work predominantly with military, drill sergeant, you know, where I'm not just like, but it's maintaining flow.
Think about a song. You know how a song builds. And you know how sometimes it can start out softly and then it gets into the chorus and it builds this crescendo. Okay? And then it's like you're telling a story, like you're building a story. So same as creating a peak pose.
Okay.
You're starting out with your basics, you're starting out with the foundation, and then you're coming into your crescendo, and your voice can come up. And so we're going to go here, use your eyes, use your motion, you know, big motions, and crescendo that pose. And then as you're coming out of the pose, just kind of taking it back down to the beginning of the song, you know, where it's softer and more relaxed, but building the pose, building like a song, just coming to a crescendo and using your body to make it look exciting, using your eyes, using a smile. That's always a wonderful thing to make it more exciting. So those things, it's what I use.
Okay. No, I think I do the same thing because I'm definitely more animated if I'm trying to push my students a little bit harder depending on what the pose is, or if we're doing a peak pose. And I'm going to tell you, so Jan does beautiful yoga nidras, like voice that just gives you chill bumps. In fact, I will be including the Nidra. We just lost her picture. She'll have to come back to us. There she is.
It was a phone call that I just declined.
You're good. But no, the Nidra on there so you can listen to the Nidra. But I want, because your voice in the Nidra is so soothing that, and it is exactly what it's soothing, but yet you pay attention to it. So it's not like, what is that? That latest thing that people listen to so they go to sleep. It's like scratching or
white noise.
Well, it's like white noise, but they actually have people like talking. There's a word for it. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the class. But with the nidra or a guided meditation where you're still wanting to pay attention to the voice, so you still are able to hold that command during that is completely relaxing.
Yes.
And I think that is a skill that you definitely naturally have. What would you, or how would you, what advice would you give potential students that maybe don't have that natural, just kind of a soothing voice? Say somebody who has maybe a harsher voice, how to obtain that calmness, or when they're trying to do a guided meditation, especially at the end during Shavasana, if they're wanting to lead in a short guided meditation.
You can approach that in so many different ways.
It's like, that's a whole nother workshop.
Well, yeah, but sometimes you can liken it to calming a friend.
Okay.
And you wouldn't talk like this if you were trying to calm a friend.
Right.
You would be very soothing. You would be listening. You would allow space. Just putting yourself in personal situations. Okay, this happened to me, and how did I calm myself down when I did this?
Right.
Or I just took a deep breath. Do you know what I'm saying? And you're trying to relax people. So you don't want to use your high pitch, perky voice.
Right.
You want to bring it down a notch. And it's just like tuning radio. You're just kind of bringing the volume down a little bit, but you're keeping it steady.
Right.
And
Okay.
you're allowing space, and you're breathing, and you're allowing them to absorb and think about what you're saying. And again, like you're teaching yoga, you allow them space for what you're saying to register. And then they can follow the nidra. You're asking them to follow your voice.
Right.
What would you want to listen to if you were trying to calm yourself down?
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
What would you listen to?
Right.
What kind of voice would you want to calm you down?
Okay. Well, I mean, because we will say like there are different actors whose voices, like Anthony Hopkins. I love his voice.
Yes, Morgan Freeman.
Yes, Morgan Freeman. But there's something about
Sam Elliott.
their voices that you're just like, okay, the joke is you could read the phone book and you're still going to be fascinated and paying attention. So almost like, who are there people that voices that you value, that you like to listen to, and figuring out what is it about their voice that resonates with you or that lands, because then you can almost take that and apply it to your teaching. Because I'm like, I don't like high-pitched, overly excited voices.
Yeah.
especially if it's, it depends if it's a yoga class and it's a power class and we're in the moving part, makes sense to me. But even then,
it can be annoying.
yes.
To be quite honest.
Right. Yeah.
It's, think of yourself like you're telling a story to a child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how would you do that? How would that resonate with a child? How would your voice resonate with a child?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when to be animated, when not to be.
Yes, when to emote, when not to.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about emoting. It is about bringing your emotions in, because when you're doing a yoga nidra, you want to create that space, and you also want to create that relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking that you can raise your pitch this way if you want to come up and bring the light up through the crown of your head, or if you want to take it down.
Okay.
And think of the light flowing through your body, down through the toes. I mean, it's just thinking, you can almost picture it.
Right.
Bringing your voice up like in a crescendo in a song, and then taking it back down. I like to compare a lot of things to music.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, I like to listen to a song that's going to build, that's going to start out kind of neutrally, and then kind of build up and tell the story. You want a singer to tell a story, not just say the words, not just sing the words.
Right.
You want to feel something, because if it's a beautiful song, you want to feel that beautiful song. And in the delivery of the singer, they can do that, or they can't.
Right.
So you're delivering something very beautiful in a yoga nidra.
Mm-hmm.
And you're expressing that through your voice, through the music of your voice, your instrument.
Right.
And
it would be like Whitney Houston singing the Star Spangled Banner and Roseanne Barr.
Right.
When dress difference.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh.
It would be one of those, like, if you haven't seen, and I'll try to find the video so that we can see how she builds it, Whitney Houston does, and it's beautiful, kind of make you cry, versus Roseanne Barr, you're just like, why are you even doing this?
Why? To be, be animated, to be annoying, who knows?
Right. But I think that if you miss the mark, though, with like a yoga nidra specifically, or a guided meditation, and a lot of times the way you're going to miss the mark is with your voice, because you're not, and I like that, you're not telling the story where you're guiding and leading the person through the path of the meditation, that that it could be, it's not necessarily what you've said, but it's actually your voice and the intonation that would be grading versus any of the words. I mean, sometimes you can say things that are completely off the wall, but because your voice is pleasant, nobody really paid attention to,
And in the yoga nidra, it's perfectly fine to script it, because you can read it in a very natural way.
Okay.
But I've had complaints from students who have taken yoga nidras, where they can tell that somebody is reading the script.
Right. Yeah.
And there's no dynamics.
Okay.
And you need dynamics in your voice when you're relating things to someone, whether it's telling a story, whether it's teaching a class. You want to have the dynamics. You don't want everything on an even keel.
Right.
You want to raise your pitch sometimes, and sometimes it's appropriate to lower your pitch.
Right.
So dynamics in music, dynamics in teaching, very important.
So when you're raising your pitch or raising your voice, that is going to be more to build energy, versus bringing it down is going to, you're actually going to lower the energy.
It's calming.
Okay.
That's how I'm relating it. I know when I raise my voice, okay, we're going to bring our arms up. skyward. And then we're going to just let them come down to the ground, come down to the knees. So you see the difference in coming up, raising the arms, and then just lowering the arms down to the feet without losing your voice, without muffling your voice.
Right.
Still projecting, so that if you're coming down into a forward fold, you're not losing your voice because you're forward folding. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You're projecting, but you're lowering your pitch.
Right. So when you're saying projecting, though, so we don't want to mistake projecting with yelling.
No yelling. Oh no, we don't yell. We don't yell in yoga, do we?
Sometimes I yell.
No, I don't yell in yoga, but so.
Only candle, and that's just when they're not. It's more. It is a loud projection. So
yes.
that
Projection, I mean drawing that air from the belly and bringing it up and projecting and really making your voice heard out going to extremes.
Right. And it still comes back to breathing, because you're not going to be able to
all about the breath.
Right. If you don't have that strong inhale to then get the exhale out and actually get your voice heard.
Exactly.
Okay. Any takeaways that you would love for up and coming yoga teachers to just really to land, that you having the longevity with being able to still use your voice on still singing, still teaching yoga, healthy, what would be like the top 3 musts always? We know breathing, definitely. You've got to learn how to breathe, and it's got to be in the correct breathing where it's all the way down into the diaphragm, that big inhale and the exhale. Right. What else would you want them to take away from this about their voice and the power in their voice that they have?
You can be powerful, and at the same time you can be compassionate.
I like that.
Read your students. Teach with confidence. Teach with a firm approach, but with a soft heart, a warm heart, your compassionate heart. And just be yourself.
Okay.
Be yourself. Because when you're yourself, when you are connected with yourself, when you are in touch with yourself, then you're in touch with your students. You and through your voice, take care of it, give it the nurturing it needs, and just develop a respect for it, because we talk for a living.
Right.
This is our instrument. This is our this is our lifeline here.
Right.
We want to take care of it.
Right.
And so I think that's what I would recommend. Now, people know that I am a yoga teacher and that I have training in yoga, right? Yes, I'm not just a singer trying to talk about the voice. And I would say just a singer.
Yeah. I will have your bio. I'll have Jan's bio on here as well. And then she also teaches in the virtual studio. She is an expert on functional movement, which I think is an important aspect for all yoga teachers to know how to teach functional movement. And I think the reason why I really wanted this to focus on voice is, as yoga teachers, we tend to focus on the physical body, as in the, you got to be able to do the chaturanga right. This is what your chair needs to look like. We need to breathe, but I don't know that we have taught that our voice and how connected that is to our entire body. And I mean, and we could go on about this, like when you get.
Can I make a suggestion, Connie?
Yeah.
I would say record yourself doing a class or a partial class, play it back to yourself, and then look at yourself, listen to yourself, and ask yourself, would I want to take a yoga class from this person?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, how does this voice appeal to me? And listening to your own voice is very, very important to
Yeah.
just, so you can see, am I breathing? Are my shoulders up to here? I mean, you know, you can assess for yourself, would I want to take a class from
Right.
me?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that for the longest time, like, do you remember, and I'm totally going to date myself here, when answering machines,
I've already done that. Dated me.
when answering machines first came out and you had to record your outgoing message. And
Yes.
I remember having to listen, like the first time I actually listened to what my voice sounded like on a recording. And I thought,
Right.
well, that's not what I think my voice sounds like in my head. You know,
Right.
it's like, oh my gosh,
Right.
my voice is like a 12-year-old child, or, you know, real Minnie Mouse-ish. And in
Right.
my head, my voice sounds deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those where when you start to listen to yourself, you actually can go, all right, I am a little sing-songy and I need to
Or am I nasal? Am I speaking very nasally through my nose? You know, I
yeah,
mean, that happens.
right.
Um, but it's a great tool
Yes.
to have yourself on camera, and you know, would I like this person teaching me?
Now I'm going to ask this question because we have taken everything virtually. Have you noticed a difference in, say, your projection and your voice as you've taught, because you teach classes on a live basis
Yes.
for many of your students, and then we've started the virtual studio,
Mhm.
which is still new. Have you noticed anything different that you have to do with your voice?
Um, I still want to project,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't need to speak as loudly as I did when I was in a class of 25 people.
Okay.
Um, but I'm very aware
Mm-hmm.
of my voice. I'm very aware of the dynamics. I'm very aware of my students
Right.
and which population I'm teaching, you know, if it's seniors
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, whomever I might be teaching. And what is this going to appeal to them?
Right.
Can they hear me? Because seniors, a lot of my seniors don't hear very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to retreat with my voice just because I'm doing a virtual class and then, you know, my students aren't hearing me, or
Right.
I'm, you
Then
know,
they're
not
going to
breath
come,
or whatever.
because if
Mhm.
they can't hear you and if the audio is
Right.
not right, then, you know, nobody, and that's another thing, nobody wants to take a class if you're
Yeah.
talking like this and they can't hear you. You know, that's not
But point.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're saying dynamic, do you feel like you have to increase that dynamic because it is virtual? Like make it a little bit more interactive. That's not the right word, but
Yeah, put some pep in your step. Absolutely. I do a thing called the joy breath.
okay.
And I tell my students, you cannot do this without smiling. And so we're doing this wild little, you know, joy breath. And, you know, it's lifting the heart and la 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 la. And it's just very energetic. But your dynamic, of course, your pitch is raised up a little bit, you know, as you're going through the motions, because we start out slow and then we pick up the pace, you know,
Okay.
but it's a lot of fun,
Right.
the joy breath.
Uh-huh.
But yes, dynamics, I highly recommend. As you're coming into Shavasana, calming. You
Right.
come into a quiet mind and a calm body. And so you want your voice to be calming. Maybe not as excitable as the joy breath.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Anything else you want to add in that I didn't cover, that advice for up and coming student, up and coming yoga teachers? Mine is have fun, bring a little humor, because I think we
Of
take
course. Oh, humor, absolutely. I mean, there are days when I don't know my left from my right, and I just go, "Hey, you guys, it's early in the morning," whatever.
Yes.
But just guide your students. Use good words. A voice that results from the deep actions that you take with your body and your mind and your heart.
And I think
when you're in touch with yourself, you can be in touch with your students, and they will feel that.
Right. And I think that one of the other words that that you and I have talked about before is harmony. And
harmony.
And that again is another one with multiple meanings. I mean, harmony in music, harmony in your life, harmony in the yoga class,
Yes.
in the world. And I think that that's something that that can resonate, across levels.
Yes.
And I think if you approach it in that respect of, it is what it is, and if I'm off, it's okay.
We're human.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. I mean,
Good.
It happens.
And I don't know my left from my right either. And it's usually because it's early morning. It's just because I get all confused and yeah. All right.
It happens.
Thank you.
Yes. Just
thank you so much. So I will be putting Jan's information up. You will see it on the right side. Jan is also a vocal coach. So we will be linking up with her as she kind of leads us through some of our practices on how to use our voice, how to project and not abuse what we've got and what is our gift for our yoga students. So any last words, Jan, before we cut this off?
Perfect. It is a gift.
Yes.
It is.
I don't know that my kids will say that sometimes, but they've always been happy when I've lost my voice, and then it's great.
Moderation, maybe. Who knows?
So I'm
it is a gift.
We'll cut the recording off.
Well, I thank you so much for this. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes.
Just hanging out with you is always a pleasure.